Hi there, welcome to Culinary Alchemy, and I'm your alchemist, Cassie H. And on our first episode today, we're going to be making pork Diane. It's originally steak Diane, but steak is expensive, so we're using pork chops. Now, steak Diane originated in France as a hotel demonstration food, where your server comes out and does it for you. Now, all of my recipes are going to be very gluten-free because I'm allergic to gluten and corn, so that's something my recipes won't include. I will also try to include different allergies with all my different recipes. Now, I can't guarantee one recipe will be like allergy free completely because that's slightly unrealistic. But this recipe, pork Diane, is gluten-free and is also nut-free. And you can substitute it to be dairy-free. But today, in the essence of the classic dish, we're making it with dairy. Sorry. So, what you shall need. I have 7 pork chops because I have friends coming over for dinner and I'd like to feed all of them. Also, I'll be using rice flour. Like I said, I'm allergic to gluten. Rice flour acts sort of like wheat flour while not being wheat flour. We're going to be using a 1/4 cup of this. Salt and pepper to taste. This is lime juice. You can use lemon juice, you can use orange juice. That would be goofy. Don't use orange juice. But you could use lemon juice. And we're using about 2 tablespoons of this. Worcestershire, I think that's how you say it, sauce. We're going to be using 2 tablespoons of this also. This is Dijon mustard. We're going to be using about 2.5 tablespoons of this. Whole milk. I don't do any of that skim, non-fat crap. Whole milk. This we will be using 2.5 to 3 cups, depends on the temperature of the room. This is heavy whipping cream. You could also use heavy cream if you can find it. I can't. Heavy whipping cream, we're using about 3 ounces. 2 onions, because that's what I had in the pantry. We're going to cut those really thin. I've got 2 sticks of butter that are almost room temperature. Exciting! Okay, we're also going to use, some people call this a food turner, some people call it a spatula. We're just using this to push around onions, so it doesn't really matter. I like wood because it won't melt. Also, we're using a whisk. Now, this whisk of mine here has these rubber guards. This means it will not ruin your nonstick pan. Good thing. Speaking of a nonstick pan, this is the biggest skillet I own. You can see it's almost as big as my torso. This is actually a saucepan because it's very thick. You use it to make sauces. Wonder of wonders, we're making a sauce today. So, let's get started. All right, for chopping onions, I don't have an anti-crying technique. I'm sorry. But what I do is I cut off the very top before I peel off the dead layers, and you lay it cut side down on the cutting board. Cut it in half. This makes it very easy for you to peel off the dead layers of skin. Try to do this really quick because the whole sulfur and crying thing. These are sweet onions that I'm using, by the way. They're less acrid, but they're just as good. I actually like them better for this dish than like regular onions, or red onions are pretty good too. They add some nice color. This is a cream sauce, and if you do it classically French, if things are white, they're supposed to be white. So you would use white pepper instead of black pepper, if you use pepper at all. You wouldn't use any red spices or anything like that. Okay. Now we're actually Julianning these, which is, Julianne is just a stick. So, really thin, all the way down. You'll notice I'm not grabbing my onion like this. Use the back of your fingers as a guide. Also as a let's not get chopped to pieces. That would suck. There we go. Leftover piece. Pretty decently thin onions. And the other one. Alright. Get your skillet on your stove. Over medium height. I actually put it on the knob that says medium. You're going to melt roughly half a stick of the butter. We're going to caramelize the onions. This is the part that will probably take the longest. see. Cut your stick of butter in half. I am dropping everything here. And you just let this melt real quick. Butter's melted like magic. So, take our onions. This is where I like a flexible cutting board. Dump it in. Very little hassle. All right, so we're going to caramelize our onions. That means we're going to cook them until they are brown and translucent, which is to say, kind of sort of see-through, but not quite. That takes a little while, and you have to cook it on low. This is not something you can flash cook on high heat for 5 minutes and be like, they're done. You're going to have burned onions. Don't do that. Caramelizing is a slow process that requires patience and salt. It takes about 15 minutes. That's why in the French version, actually a lot of cooks would come out with their onions already caramelized in like a little bowl. That way they could be like, ha-ha! It's magic! Or culinary trickery, like alchemy. Not really. It's just trickery. Adding in my salt. It has a little S on it. Ain't that cute? Pepper has a P on it. Break apart ye onions. You can see how they're already getting a little bit translucent, but that's it trying to fool you. It's not ready yet. Alright, they are almost done here. You can see they're mostly translucent, but they're not brown yet, so they're not caramelized. However, you could pull these out right now and they'd still be just a tiny bit crispy if you wanted them that way. But I actually want them caramelized and nice and brown. So they've got another 3 to 5 minutes. So I kind of lied just a bit. It's actually been about 10 minutes. But as you can see, they're gorgeous and caramelized. Yay, so pretty. They're actually not 100% done, but that's actually what we want for this recipe, because we're actually going to evacuate, not the dance floor, but the saucepan. So I have a Pyrex bowl, and I would suggest you get something like Pyrex for this, because it is less likely to shatter and try and kill you. It's possible, but it's just less likely. So, with your skillet back on the heat, you put in the remainder of your butter. By now the skillet should be warm. It shouldn't take it super long to melt. I also could lie. That happens every now and then. So I grabbed tongs because it came to me. If we're going to put pork in a pan, we need to at least flip it over probably once, probably 3 times actually, because I am paranoid. So we're going to add our pork. Lovely, lovely chops. We're going to go, you put it down and then drop it away from you. So 1, 2, 3, ow, that hurt. 4, 5, 6, gonna be a close fit, super crammed. So I'm actually going to lower the heat some so we don't burn the bejesus out of our pork. This is my pork can. This is my not pork can. I'm going to put some salt in no particular order. Pepper. There's not much pepper left. And lid that sucker. And now I'm going to wash my hands and get this asparagus ready for a side dish. It's asparagus. It's already been rinsed off. It's pretty. And we're going to cook it. Alright, I'm washing my hands because I went from cooking pork to cooking a vegetable. Now, it's especially like if you're cooking it in the same dish simultaneously, it's not as big a thing. While it's still a thing, but it's not as big a thing. but you don't want to get your raw meat juices mixed up with your vegetable juices or fruit or whatever. That's going to get people sick. There's been so many times that's happened in restaurants, and so wash your hands. If you're not sure, wash your hands. If your hands get dry and cracked, wear gloves and wash your hands still. That's how that goes. Asparagus. Alright, asparagus is really nice. Something really cool about it is you don't have to cut off all the stems individually. You can if you want them to be uniform. That doesn't bother me. So all you do is you grab it by the short end, long end, snap. That's where the firm ends. That's all going to be soft and beautiful. So, snapping away. If you have a compost pile, that's awesome for that. If you don't, like me, that's what trash cans are for. That was violent. So my pork is going to be cooking for about 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to flip over the pork, cook it for another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to check its temperature. If the temperature is not at 160, then I'm going to put it in the oven at probably 350 until the temperature reads 160. I honestly couldn't tell you how long it is, the amount of pork chops, and how awesome your oven is. That changes that, but at least 15 minutes. The asparagus is going to be drizzled with olive oil, salt, and pepper, and put at the 350-degree oven, and it's going to be cooked until it's mushy, so about 6 minutes. That was a lot. That one's all firm. We're going to look at our pork. Alright, you see how lovely it looks. Which is to say very bright and pink. You can see how it's kind of swollen at the top, and that's how you can tell it's actually cooking on the bottom. Also, the fact that the butter is nice and brown tells you that it's been cooking. So, you flip them nice and pretty and brown. I did change the heat all the way to low. I don't remember if I said that earlier. But with so many pork chops, I didn't want them to burn. 6 and 7. Alright. And then put the lid back on. Raise the heat a little bit. It's about medium low. And then it's going to cook for another 5 minutes. Put these in the sink. I'm going to wash them off really quick because they touched the raw pork. If they touch the cooked pork, that's cross-contamination again. So if you have a sink already like partially filled with dishwater, I would do that. That way you can just wash off your stuff really quick. Don't just dip it in there. That's cheating, and that doesn't actually work all the way. So wash everything and use it again, just like I'm going to wash my 9x13, and then put the pork in it when it's done and put it in the oven for a few minutes just in case. It's important to know how your thermometers work. Now this one here is an instant read probe thermometer. You see how this part here is shaped all different? That's because you need to insert the probe at least to there. Sometimes there'll be a notch on the side. I don't think this one has a notch on the side. But they'll sometimes have a notch on the side up to here-ish. So you'll have to probe it into whatever you're measuring up to there to get an accurate read. So this one here, you turn it on. I turned it on to Fahrenheit, not Celsius, because I live in the US of A, and I can technically convert, but it would take pen and paper and probably a calculator. So there's that. Our wonderful pork looks like wonderful pork. However, I have a sneaking suspicion it's still rare. And you can actually kind of tell by slightly pushing down on them, like I am here, how much give determines how done they are. Oh, that one especially. Now, I'm not stabbing them. I'm not... No. It's lightly pushing on the side. So, I'm going to pull it out. Now, I can stab it all the way through. That'd be silly. So you're going to insert your probe from the side. Okay? All right, so it's stopping around 125, 126. So it's not done yet. I'm gonna put it in my wash 9x13. And that was the one that looked like it was the most done. So I'm going to just evacuate all of them. My tongs are tiny, but they have silicone grippers, which is nice. Oh no! Come on. Don't make a fool of me on YouTube. It wants to make a fool of me on YouTube. There we go. One left. There we go. So like I said, going in the oven. Turn this off temporarily. Going in the oven at 350 for about 15 minutes. And then I'm going to check on the temperature again. I have a toaster on, so I had to push bake. 350 timer, 30 minutes works, and then I'll just check it when it's half done. Meanwhile, all this lovely leftover juice, if this was crumbs on the bottom that were not very wet, it would be called fond, F-O-N-D. That's French. I don't know exactly what it means, but here, since we're starting off with something wet, it's nice. So we're going to make a roux. So, turn this back on, medium low. Take our 1/4 cup of measured, okay, my cat got on the counter. So, 1/4 cup of our pre-measured rice flour. Now, what you could do, like a stupid person, would be to dump this straight in the middle. And be like, ha 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 ha. That is how you get clumps. We don't want clumps. We want it to be nice and smooth, like a sauce. So what I'm going to do is grab my whisk, start spinning here. That pork fat, it's very angry. So now, you just sprinkle that on, a little at a time. Get it all mixed in nice to the sauce. Now, if it was all crumbles at the bottom, you would put in some of the rest of the butter, and then you would go from there. I might actually put some of the rest of that butter, because this is a little bit more dry than I want it to be. And that's okay. You learn to cook by failing sometimes. This is not something that you're going to get in one try, probably. Cooking in general. This recipe is pretty easy. So right here what we have is a white roux. White roux is when it's cooked very, very, very little. And it's the most thickening, because the longer you cook flour, the less holding power it has. That's true for gluten-free flours as well as wheat flours. The longer you cook it, the better flour, less holding power. We're going to cook this about 3 minutes without letting it sit. If you let it sit, then you're just going to have a blob of goo. No thank you. I don't want to eat Play-Doh. We'll cook it a few minutes and it'll be called blonde, which is not brown, but it's not white. It has a decent amount of holding power and it has a little bit of flavor, which is what you want. My wonderful sous chef, camera lady, RaginAsian. Ha, names. Hi. She cut me 2 tablespoons of butter, and she put that in there for me. You can see how much looser it looks. This is actually much closer to how I wanted it. So we're good now. We're good. And once this butter melts, I'll give it another 60 seconds. And then I'm going to take my milk. I've measured out 2 cups of milk, and I will put that in after it cooks for 60 seconds. And I will whisk, and my arm will hurt, but it will be worth it. Butter's almost unmelted. It's like a tiny little hockey puck. And butter's melted. 60 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 7, 8, 59, 60. Milk enters the party. Slowly. You don't want it to kill everything. Milk does that sometimes. It will ruin everything that you love, especially if you're allergic. Oh my gosh, it got on my counter. Oh no. That's what paper towels are for. There we go. There we go. Okay. Now, time to whisk mercilessly to prevent clumps. Y'all are gonna get tired of watching me whisk, I promise. I'm gonna get tired of watching me whisk. But that's okay. That's how you build strong whisking arms. Alright. That looks pretty good. Got some flour building up on the sides. That's okay. Alright, heavy whipping cream, which actually ended up being 4 ounces, not 3, because I'm not psychic. Putting that in here. Heavy whipping cream will just make the sauce a little bit thicker, that much more awesome. So we're going to let this cook for about 3 minutes, and then we'll add in other stuff. Alright, it's only been about 2.5 minutes. That's okay. Alright, so we got Dijon mustard. This is probably a little bit more than 2 tablespoons. I just squeezed it from the bottle. That's okay too. So, we're going to add this in. Raw mustard. Whisking in like crazy. Mustard is going to thicken it up and also give it flavor. You can actually see where the mustard is because it's getting thicker. Now, because I used a roux to make this sauce, it's important to note that as it cools, it will get thicker. So if it looks really kind of not very thick, I guess loose is a word, then you let it cool for a bit and it'll actually thicken up. This is actually thickening up a lot. Looks pretty good. And you want it to be pretty thick. Sometimes I've actually put in cream cheese. Not so terribly orthodox, but it made it all the better. So, apparently I'm not very strong. Cameraman, can you? Thank you. Alright, so I have a really nice and stable measuring tablespoon. So I'm going to fill it up once. Oh no, spills. Tablespoon number 1. Tablespoon number 2, which also spilled everywhere. Props to RaginAsian. He's awesome. And then fill that. I have to remind my arm to keep stirring.
Helps to be ambidextrous.
It does help to be ambidextrous. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm very right-handed. And yet I'm measuring with my left. I have a brain some days. Oh no! Paper towels! 2 tablespoons, both of lime juice and Worcestershire thing. So, whisk this for another minute or so just to get everything all combined. And then we're going to add the onions. And we're going to let that cook some more and be awesome. Yeah. Alright. Onions! Those wonderful, delicious, juicy, mostly done onions. We're going to incorporate them back into our party. And mix everything together. And then it's time to check the temperature of our pork. Now, if it's in the 150s, I'd probably be okay with that because we're going to put that into the sauce and let it cook for just a few minutes. Let everything become, let the flavors combine, let it all be wonderful and beautiful. And then we're going to eat stuff. The onions are still kind of clumped, so I'm mixing them up. There we go. I'm actually going to lower the heat some. That way we don't ruin things. Okay, so we're going to check the temperature of our pork. I have funny little oven mitts. So first I'm going to pull out just a cushion so I can rest the pork down. All right. Then I moved my stuff. So, tongs, pork, pierce, 30, 143, 46, 49, 150. All right. That's deciding between 153 and 54. That's okay. And I am going to check each and every one because I care about the people I'm cooking for and I don't want them to get sick. 154, 155. I gasp. That clicking sound is my dog, by the way. 156. Turn this off to conserve battery. So the pork's all in the 150 range. That's okay because we're going to put it in the sauce. But first, that asparagus I mentioned, I did not neglect it. Tossed it in olive oil, salt, and pepper. Just put it back in for the remaining 11 minutes. Ought to be pretty good. And my sauce is boiling. Not something you want to have happen. I should have lowered the heat. Keep that in mind, all you home alchemists. Alright, I had to save my sauce. Don't let it boil. So turn down the heat when you go to check on your pork, if you have to put it in the oven. My dog is still excited. So, put the pork in. Nestle it nice. Since I'm using metal tongs this time, I'm going to be very careful not to touch the bottom of my pan. I spent money on this pan. I don't want to ruin it. Excuse me. What we're going to do after this is use my, probably the other tongs and just cover up the pork real nice. And then we're going to put the lid on and turn down the heat. Cook it for just a little bit. Let the pork finish cooking. Let all the flavors meld. See that juice? We're going to use that juice. It's not terribly hot. I like it. It's kind of hot. Put that on there. Counter will be fine. Let's get together. Weirdly, with clumps in the way. That's all right. There we go. Much better. Okay. Put you back. Killed two birds with one stone. Everything's nice and covered. So I'm going to lower the heat this time, low as it'll go, and put the lid on. And I'm going to do some dishes. Asparagus time! I actually did all the dishes. RaginAsian is awesome. She helped me. So, asparagus! That's my timer saying, hey look, food's done. Alright, so this asparagus looks really nice. Not 100% cooked, which I'm completely okay with. These are a little bit wiggly, but they're still going to be nice and crisp. And that's good. It'll be a nice counterpoint to the steak Diane, or rather our pork Diane. So, we're going to go to our plates, which are nice and lined up here. camera magic. Alright, so I'm going to hit each plate with a few pieces of asparagus. And there's a crap ton of asparagus. You'll notice there are 5 plates here and 7 pork chops. You want to know why? I need some for my lunch at work tomorrow. Cheating! So, that's something, if you're allergic to food and you want to conserve your meals, definitely get used to eating leftovers for lunch the next day. I totally do that all the time. That way I just make more food. My dog's barking, in case you can hear something. Okay, let's put some extra asparagus on this plate. Some more asparagus on that plate. Good Lord. Okay. Alright. Gorgeous asparagus. Is that how you say multiple? I think so. We're going to go with it. Gorgeous asparagus. Okay. So, our pork. You see how beautiful that is. It's actually not terribly pretty, but it's going to be delicious. I ended up turning off the heat, actually, partway through doing dishes because I didn't want it to get ruined. So, where did those tongs go? 1 pork chop on each plate. And I'm going to do my best not to spill any. So I'm going to put these close to the plates. I like having this handle for things like this. So, one. This one has a hair on it. I wonder how that happened. 2. Now all that cream sauce we're totally going to ignore, right? No, we're not. That's what ladles are for. Or spoons. That ladle didn't look very pretty. Spoon. Nice spoonful. There. You don't want it to completely cover the asparagus because you want to taste asparagus. That's what it's there for. Put some onions on it too. 2. Without the pork chops, it's marvelously lighter. 3. 4. And 5. This back here. And there's plenty of extra sauce in case any of the guests want to put extra sauce on their steak. They totally can. But if they don't, that's cool too. So, pork Diane. I got some on my hand. Hope you guys really appreciate or really enjoyed this episode of Culinary Alchemy. I had a lot more fun than I thought I would actually making this episode for you guys. So, be sure to tune in next week for our episode on gnocchi. I haven't entirely decided what the sauce is going to be, but gnocchi is a classic Italian dumpling made with potatoes and wheat flour usually. We're probably going to use rice flour again because I have a lot. So, I hope you guys tune in next week. Be sure to subscribe to our channel up here. Yeah, up here. And I'm going to make a copy of our recipe down below in the information section. And we've got a Facebook page, so make sure you go over there somewhere and check that out too. See you guys next week. Bye!